All right, this is the Renshu Taiko Kuchi Shoga tutorial video. And if you are watching this right now, you should have already watched the vocabulary sheet video as well as the Kuchi Shoga video. In that particular Kuchi Shoga video, there was a snippet of a performance where your classmates, Brendan, Sean, and Nathan, performed Kuchi Shoga demonstration. So they were playing Renshu Taiko on the taiko drum as well as performing the piece through Kuchi Shoga. And for the next couple of weeks, while you're studying on your own, you are tasked with this responsibility of learning the Kuchi Shoga uh, notation for Renshu Taiko. So you should have that ready by the time we convene for week 3, whether that's in person or if we're continuing online. I am going to expect that you know this Renshu Taiko Kushi Shoga coming into the class for week 3. So we're going to go over that material right now so that you have something to practice off of. And before that happens, I'm actually going to share a video of myself doing a Kuchi Shoga performance of Renshu Taiko so that you get an idea of what the Kuchi Shoga sounds like. I'm going to be doing this on a 90 beat per minute backbeat or a G, which is a bit quick, bit fast, but we'll slow it down as we go through everything. So just to give you an idea of what a Kuchi Shoga performance sounds like once again.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so re, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, 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 hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, 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 don. 道路つく道路つく道路つくどんどん道路つく道路つく道路つくどんどんどんからどんからどんからからからどんからどんからどんからからからどんつくどんつくどんつくどんどんどんつくどんつくどんつくどんどんすどんすどんすどんどんそれすどんすどんすどんどん
Okay, so what you just watched was a Renshu Taiko Kuchi Shoga performance. Again, that was at 90 beats per minute, which is performance speed, and so it's a bit fast, and I'm not going to expect you to be able to do that by week 3. We're going to slow that down. So the backbeat that you were hearing, that clicking, when you're actually practicing real taiko in a class or ensemble setting, that beat or that time, the bass beat, the G, is going to be kept by the person playing the shime daiko, which is the small roped drum that we talked about in the vocabulary sheet. Okay, so I just used a basic metronome to practice, which I will be providing those types of tracks for you to practice with. Those items will be posted onto Canvas, and so there should be enough materials for you to get started with learning Renshu Taiko Kuchi Shoga and just to practice familiarizing yourself with everything that is involved in taiko. So I mentioned that I normally don't provide any kind of sheet music or guide to the material that I teach in class, and it's just because I think that people learn better when they're forced to write things down for themselves, since taiko is an oral tradition. But since we are here in a remote setting, I figured I would make it a little bit easier for you to follow along. And so we'll be doing this tutorial with a guide sheet in front of you. So just a friendly reminder that you should not be too dependent on that material. I do expect you to memorize all of this because we never ever perform taiko with like any kind of a sheet music or a score or a music stand in front of us. So it would be helpful for you to take this time to repeat after me or just to read through the papers or just to really listen to what it is that I'm doing and what I'm teaching so that you're not too dependent on the written materials. All right. So I'm going to share my screen of this Kuchi shoga sheet right here. And once more, Renshu Taiko means practice. It's a piece that was developed by Seiichi Tanaka sensei of the San Francisco Taiko Dojo. And the neat thing is that San Francisco Taiko Dojo is actually the first taiko group that formed in North America in 1968. And as far as I know, Seiichi Tanaka sensei, as well as the San Francisco Taiko Dojo, was still very active in the taiko scene. They just celebrated their 50th anniversary in 2018. And so that means that taiko as an art form here in the United States of America and North America by extension has only been around for like 50 or some odd years. And it's a living history that we're continuing to build on. So what started out as one taiko group in 1968 has now flourished. I want to say there's hundreds of groups across the United States, Canada, California, Southern California specifically actually has quite a saturation of taiko groups, with there being about 50 some odd groups in Southern California alone, and we're talking about the area from Oxnard to San Diego. Okay, so that's just a little bit of a history lesson for Renshu Taiko, just to say and inform you that everywhere you go in North America, whatever taiko group that you might come across, or wherever you end up, that group will probably know some version of Renshu Taiko. So it's important that you're learning this piece and all of the dynamics associated with it. Like a lot of the stuff that you're going to be practicing through Renshu Taiko really lays the foundation for the more complicated things that we'll be doing later in the quarter. Or if you stick with Taiko for several quarters, you'll see many of these themes and these notes come up again. All right, so Renshu Taiko. Right here, this is my system of writing down Kuchi shoga for people to follow along with, okay? So I want to point out a few things. It's like this is a grid notation, and there is no standard for this. So if you think about notation, or if you can write down things differently, I encourage you to do so. Don't just rely on what I'm giving you. But to explain my system of thinking about the notes and then the grid, you'll see that there are 8 columns. And what I mentioned before on the vocabulary sheet and other parts of this class is that everything we do is based on an 8 count, right? So 8 columns with the numbers 1 through 8 represent 8 counts, okay? And then if we're reading across, this is how we're reading across, okay? So we're reading from left to right, beats 1 to 8. And a few things about the way the score is written. I put a note down here, kind of like a key. So you'll see that anything that is italicized indicates that it's a crescendo. So a crescendo is something that you play where it starts off as a low volume and it increases to a high volume. So for example, you'll notice right here, right? There's this entire line right here is italicized, and so that means that it's a crescendo. And then these material that is written in red is a kiai or a kakegoe. So those are the beats that you're actually not playing or hitting the drum, but you should be verbalizing those kiai and kakegoe, as we've discussed in the Kuchi shoga video. So again, really important that if you have not watched that Kuchi shoga video, you need to go back and watch that so you have a better understanding of what all of this stuff on the screen right here means. Okay, so the Renshu Taiko Kuchi shoga tutorial, let's call it that. We're looking at the grid right here, and it starts off with an 8 count. And so you'll always hear me saying when we review things like this that I'm going to give you an 8 count lead in, or you're going to wait for 8 counts. And that's very standard, where if you're waiting for the G player, you know, the person playing the Shime Daiko, they're going to give you 8 counts, and then we start singing these lines. And it's important that you enunciate when you're delivering the Kuchi shoga. Okay, we want to have a very like crisp and confident delivery. So for example, line number 1, if I were to sing it, this is what it sounds like. Okay, so this is line number 1 that I'm reading right across. Ready? And don, hup, don, hup, don, hup, don, hop. Okay, so I'm just going to put that onto a backbeat so that you can hear what it sounds like. And then we'll be going, 60 beats per minute. And we'll wait for 8 clicks before we start singing. Okay, so I'm going to count off 8 for us so that you can get a feel for what 8 counts are. And then we'll start singing this line together right here. Okay, we ready? All right. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop. Okay, pretty simple, right? We're just going at a straight backbeat. So ideally, a metronome is the perfect tool to be working with this. Since you have a kind of an understanding of that, let's try that again, just this first line. And we are waiting for the 8 counts again, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sol, re, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop. Okay, so I want to point out that when I'm counting things 1 through 8, sometimes on beats 7 and 8, I will say sore, which you should be familiar with as a kakegoe, which means let's go. Okay, so sometimes you'll hear me count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sore, and then you will start whatever that it is that you're performing. Okay, so hopefully you are still with me at this point. We're going to move on to line number 2, and you'll see this entire line right here is italicized, which means that these beats are to be presented as a crescendo. And one more time, a crescendo is when the volume of the beats goes from low to high. So your loudest volume of this don right here should match whatever it is that you were doing here on line 1. So I will sing these 2 lines together, and then you can join me on the second time. And before I get into it, I'm going to give myself another 8 count lead in. Okay, so ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sol, re, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, 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 don. Okay. Now, hopefully you heard a volume difference during the crescendo. It's a little bit hard since I'm in a room that I shouldn't be making too much noise in, but you get the idea. It's like don. For the crescendo, it's got to start off really, really soft. Okay. And I should mention that so far, all of these hits that we're working on, all of this Kuchi shoga. So I want you first and foremost to be familiar with the Kuchi shoga. So reading or being able to perform what's on this score, you should be able to do that. And then if you're thinking about like which arms are hitting, because you've already watched that performance video, right now, at least for the lines that we just did, everything is alternating, okay? So the class is right dominant, which means that this beat right here on beat 1 is always going to start with your right hand. And of course, beat 2, the text is in red, and so we don't play anything, but we vocalize it as a a kakegoe, excuse me. And so when you get to beat 3, that is going to be played with your left, okay? So I'm going to run through the lines 1 and 2 again. So these 2 lines that we just went through, and then I'm going to be showing you what it is that I'm doing with my hands right here. So, you know, this is my right hand and this is my left hand. Okay, so one more time at 60 beats per minute, and feel free to do this with me, at least the Kuchi shoga. Okay, you ready? 8 count lead in before we start everything. Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sol, re, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, 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 don. All right. And if we're looking ahead to these next few lines, what we just did, those two lines actually repeats over again. Okay, so once you finished this crescendo, it goes back to don, hup, don, hup, don, hup, don, hup, don, 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 don. So most of Renshu Taiko, the lines are always repeating. So you'll play everything kind of back to back. I just wrote it all out here on this score, and so it kind of looks long and intimidating, but if you get one of the lines, then it repeats again. So why don't we go ahead and play from here through here? So it's just essentially lines 1 and 2, and then you repeat the same thing again. And you can use this sheet for a reference if you need to read off of it. I'm going to go at 60 beats per minute once again, and reading through, performing, I should say, through all of lines 1 to here. Okay, we ready? An 8 count lead in, and then we'll start our Kuchi shoga. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so, re, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, 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 hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, 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 don. Okay? So I hope this is simple enough to follow along. I'm going to keep moving ahead, but if you need to pause or rewind to rework on some of the parts, please go ahead and do so. We'll move down to this next line right here, which is doko tsuku, doko tsuku, doko tsuku, don, don. Okay, so if you're referring to the Kuchi shoga video or the sheet that was shared about the basic Kuchi shoga notation, you'll know that dokos are loud hits, so 2 loud hits in rapid succession, whereas tsukus are 2 soft hits in rapid succession. And it's very important that when we're working on Kuchi shoga that you can convey that volume difference in your voice. Okay, so doko is going to be really loud, whereas tsuku is barely audible. So whatever it is that's coming out of your voice, conveyed through your voice, should be easily translated onto a drum, applied to a drum when that time comes for you to play on a drum. So dynamics-wise, we're reading through this line right here. And like I said before, the lines tend to repeat themselves, so you'll notice that this line and this line are exactly the same thing. Okay? So I'm going to read through this just so that you can hear the volume difference, and then we'll do it together on the 60 beat per minute backbeat. Okay, ready? Doko tsuku, doko tsuku, doko tsuku, don, don, doko tsuku, doko tsuku, doko tsuku, don, don. We're thinking about dynamics, right? So loud, loud, soft, soft, loud, loud, soft, soft. So just keep that in mind as you're going through the Kuchi shoga, and also still everything is still alternating. Okay, so right, left, left. Doko tsuku. Okay, so focus on just the Kuchi shoga right now, and we'll be reading through these 2 lines right here. And starting off with the 60 beat per minute metronome or the backbeat, and we're waiting for 8 counts before we start. Okay, so I'm going to count us off so that we don't get lost. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so, re, doko tsuku, doko tsuku, doko tsuku, don, don, doko tsuku, doko tsuku, doko hopefully that was easy enough to follow along. If you are up for the challenge, let's take it back from to the very top of the piece. So we're going to be going from here all the way through to here. So that line that we just finished off at, okay? So again, 60 beats per minute on the G track, and we're waiting for 8 counts. Okay, so if you want to do that sore with me, like if you're anticipating counts 7 and 8 and that sore, do the sore so that we can all get prepared to start this performance together. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, re, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, 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 hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, 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 どこつく、どこつく、どこつく、どん、どん、どこつく、どこつく、どこつく、どん、どん. All right. So again, I really just want you to focus on getting the Kuchi shoga down. But for those of you who maybe have some familiarity with Renshu and you're just kind of thinking ahead to which arms are hitting which beats, as I mentioned from before, everything starts on the right hand, right arm. And so from the very beginning up until this point right here, it's all alternating. So when right hits, left is getting ready to hit, and so on and so forth. So all alternating, right, left. And it gets interesting as we move on this sheet right here to the don katas, because this is where you're going to start thinking about a double hit. So when we see don kata, the don is the hit into the center or the hara of the drum, as you'll recall. And then the katas are the 2 hits in rapid succession on the rim or the fuchi of the drum, right? So don is in the center of the drum, and then the kata is on the rim or the fuchi of the drum, okay? And I'm gonna sing or just read the Kuchi shoga through again. Once you finish this line, it's exactly the same thing that repeats. Okay, so I'll do that chunk together. And just so you know what it sounds like, okay? So we're paying attention that there's a crescendo right here, and we know that because it's italicized. So listen for it in my voice. Here we go. Don, kara, don, kara, don, kara, 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 don, kara, don, kara, don, kara, kara, kara. Okay? So again, if you're thinking about which arm is going where, don is going to be that right hit into the center of the drum, and then you're going to move right arm up to the rim, the fuchi of the drum, to play the kara. Okay, so that's where that double hit comes in. So it's a double right. Don, kara. So right, left. All right, I'm going to start us off on an 8 counts, still on the 60 beat per minute G metronome track, and then we'll sing through this whole chunk right here, the don karas, with the repetition. Okay, so ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do, re, don, kara, don, kara, don, kara, 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 don, kara, don, kara, don, kara, kara, kara. Okay. Okay, so how about we take it from the top, from here all the way through to the don katas that we just did. Okay, so grab a drink of water. Yeah, prepare yourself. It is a lot to vocalize in being mindful to take your breaths. Okay, so do your best. I have many years doing this, and so that's, if it looks simple, it's because I've practiced for a long time. Okay, so starting up here again with the 8 count lead in, and then we'll go from here all the way to here. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so, re, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, 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 hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, 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 doko tsuku, doko tsuku, doko tsuku, don, don, doko tsuku, doko tsuku, doko tsuku, don, 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 kara don, kara don, kara, kara, kara don, kara don, kara don, kara, kara, kara. Okay, so hopefully you are still with me. We're going to keep moving right along, but feel free to pause and rework some of the material if it's not smooth yet. But we are on the home stretch, okay? And this last line right here, it's also played with that double right, the don, tsuku. And the hitting for that is going to go like right, right, left. So you'll recall that don is the loud hit into the center of the drum, whereas the suku is very light hits, so 2 hits in succession on to the center of the drum. Okay, so when you're hitting it, it's going to go like right, really big hit into the center of the drum, and then the tsuku are just 2 soft hits in rapid succession also at the center of the drum. So the same point, you're just adjusting the strength at which you are approaching that hit. Okay, so again, the line goes through and then it's repeated again. So I will just verbalize this so that you can hear what it's supposed to sound like, dynamics and all. Right, so don, tsuku, don, tsuku, don, tsuku, don, 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 tsuku, don, tsuku, don, tsuku, don, don. Okay, so you can try that with me on the 60 beat per minute G track. So as always, we're going to give ourselves an 8 count lead in, and then we'll start singing through these 2 lines. They're identical, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so, re, don, tsuku, don, tsuku, don, tsuku, don, 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 tsuku, don, tsuku, don, tsuku, don, don. Okay, so I think that we should connect that to everything that we have learned from the top of the page. So if you're ready, we'll be again giving ourselves an 8 count lead in before we sing through the entire sheet up to this point. Okay, so remember to pay special attention to everything in red. Those are the kake goes, and anything italicized is what? Crescendo, right? So you're growing the volume from a low volume to a high volume, and everything else, you should be ready to do this. So let's just try it together. We're waiting for 8 counts before we start, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so, re, don, hop, don, hop, don, don, hop, don, 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 hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, 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 どこつく、どこつく、どこつく、どん、どん、どこつく、どこつく、どこつく、どん、どん、どん、からどん、からどん、からからからどん、からどん、からどん、からからからどん、つく、どん、つく、どん、つく、どん、どん、どん、つく、どん、つく、どん、つく、どん、どん。Okay, and final stretch. These last two lines, they are almost identical, so I'm just going to sing them in one chunk so that you know what it sounds like. Okay, so it starts on a kiai or kakegoe, but all the same, the don is still going to be played on your right hand. So like I said, everything is just always starting with that right arm, and we're very focused on the right arm dominance in this class. Okay, so running through these two lines. Su, don, su, don, su, don, don. So, re, su, don, su, don, su, don, don. And then there's like a blank right here because we'll be done. So, excuse me, we'll try it on the backbeat and then see how we fare. Okay, so waiting for 8 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Su, don, su, don, su, don, don. So, re, su, don, su, don, su, don, don. Okay, so let's do that again. Try it with me. We'll wait for the 8 counts and then we'll sing through both of these lines. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, re, su, don, su, don, su, don, don. So, re, su, don, su, don, su, don, don. Adjusting the arms. So this goes back to everything alternating, right? So even if we're starting with the suit, your first hit of this don right here is going to be with your right hand. And then the next hit will be the don with your left hand. And then right hit, left hit, and repeat that. So again, right hit, left hit, right and left. Okay, so if you're up to the challenge, we are going to go ahead and sing this through its entirety, okay? So why don't you take a moment to, you can pause this or just go ahead and, ready yourself, grab a drink of water, and then we'll come back and start on this Renshu Taiko Kuchi shoga performance, going through this entire thing at the 60 beats per minute that we've been working on. Okay, So going through Renshu Taiko Kuchi Shoga at 60 beats per minute, we're going to try to make it through this entire sheet together. So just try to keep up with me. We're doing the same thing that we've done for the past 20, 30 minutes. So we'll try to get through the entire thing. And important reminders to really enunciate. So you want to have a lot of confidence and like power in your delivery. So now is not the time to be shy, especially if you're just working by yourself in the confines of your own room or in the yard or something. It's really just like you and me. So you should try to match what it is that I'm doing. Okay, so we'll start off at 60 beats per minute, and we will give ourselves an 8 count before we start going through the entire thing. All right, so let me try to get this into our frame so it's a bit smaller. Okay, are we ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so, re, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, 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 hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, hop, don, 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 どこつく、どこつく、どこつく、どん、どん、どこつく、どこつく、どこつく、どん、どん、どん、からどん、からどん、からからからどん、からどん、からどん、からからからどん、つくどん、つくどん、つくどん、どん、どん、つくどん、つくどん、つくどん、どん、つ、どん、つ、どん、つ、どん、どん、それ、つ、どん、つ、どん、つ、どん、どん。Okay, so how did you do? If you need to rewind that so you can practice with me, feel free to do it. I'm also going to post the metronome tracks for you to practice under the modules section of Canvas. So you'll want to look under the Renshu Taiko folder for all of these resources that will be available to you. And if you have any questions about this material, you can feel free to email me or message me on Canvas. But ideally, I want you to be working on this at your own pace so that you can get comfortable with this and have it ready, just the Kuchi Shoga, by the time week 3 rolls around. Let's see, just for fun, why don't we try to do this at bit of a quicker speed. So I'm just adjusting the metronome, and I think I want to take it at about like 80 beats per minute. So something to work towards, not quite the 90 beats that I showed you for performance quality, but 80 is pretty close to getting there. So let's try this, taking it again from the top, but we're going to take it at a bit of a quicker tempo. And we'll be giving ourselves an 8 count lead in before we jump into the entire Renshu piece. Okay, so I'm actually not going to use the cursor to follow along. And maybe you don't even need this sheet right now. So whatever you're comfortable with to practice on, let's get started. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, それ、どん、はっ、どん、はっ、どん、はっ、どん、はっ、どん、どん、どん、どん、どん、どん、どん、どん、どん、はっ、どん、はっ、どん、はっ、どん、はっ、どん、 don, 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 don. Doko tsuku, doko tsuku, doko tsuku, don, don, doko tsuku, doko tsuku, doko tsuku, don, don, don. Kara don, kara don, kara 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 don, kara don, kara don, kara 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 don, tsuku don, tsuku don, tsuku don, 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 tsuku don, tsuku don, tsuku don, don, tsu, don, tsu, don, tsu, don, don, それす、don, tsu, don, tsu, don, don. Cool. Okay, so hopefully you can do that with me, but something to practice towards. And that would actually conclude our tutorial on Renshu Taiko Kuchi shoga. So good luck practicing. And again, if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to me, email or through the Canvas app. Okay. All right. Happy practicing, and let's see what you can do come week 3.